China conducts military exercises around Taiwan and updates on senior military official confirmations. All of that and more today, July 13th, 2023. Good morning, early birds. I'm Simone Perez, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, some Republican lawmakers hope to rein in what they view as, quote, bad apples at the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Restore the Department of Veterans Affairs Accountability Act would give the VA authority to hold employees accountable, including making it easier to discipline and remove employees based on performance or misconduct. This proposal would clarify similar legislation President Donald Trump signed in 2017. However, federal courts, the Merit Systems Protection Board, and the Federal Labor Relations Authority have punctured holes in that 2017 law. VA Secretary Dennis McDonough said in March that the agency wouldn't be using some of the authorities provided in that 2017 law. He said the authorities were landing the VA in front of judges rather than helping with workforce issues. And VA does not support the new bill. VA officials explained that the appearance of a delay when addressing a misconduct case is not because it does not have the power to deal with it. Rondi Wei serves as a human resources advisor at the agency. He said it takes time to conduct a thorough investigation. Supporters of the legislation say it is needed to make sure poor-performing workers aren't hurting the ability to help veterans and staff morale. But there is concern that harsher policies will negatively affect the agency as it goes through a hiring surge to implement the PACT Act. That law is meant to provide healthcare services to millions of veterans who were exposed to toxic fumes from burn pits. Unions are also taking aim at a provision of the bill that says procedures would supersede collective bargaining agreements. The VA has the second largest federal workforce behind the Department of Defense, with nearly 400,000 employees. It issues roughly 4,900 to 5,000 disciplinary actions a year on average. We also have some other news coming out of the Indo-Pacific. Starting with China, Beijing sent Navy ships and a large group of warplanes toward Taiwan over 2 days. This comes before the island's annual defense drills aimed at deterring an invasion from the mainland. The Chinese People's Liberation Army sent 38 warplanes and 9 Navy vessels around Taiwan between Tuesday and Wednesday. Until noon yesterday, the military flew another 30 planes, which included J-10 and J-16 fighters. 32 of those planes crossed the midline of the Taiwan Strait, which is an unofficial boundary considered as a buffer between China and Taiwan. Later on Wednesday, another 23 planes crossed the midline. Taiwan is scheduled to hold the annual Hanguang exercise later this month. It'll also conduct the annual Wanan exercises to prepare civilians for natural disasters and evacuations in case of an air raid. Here's why it matters. China claims self-ruled Taiwan as its own territory. It stepped up the number of military planes sent toward the island because of its political activities. In the past year, it has also started sending its Navy vessels and drones to circle the waters near the island. And going now to the Korean Peninsula, North Korea test-fired its first intercontinental ballistic missile in 3 months yesterday. That is due to what the North viewed as the United States reconnaissance activity near its territory. Some experts say North Korea likely launched its developmental Road Mobile Solid Fuel ICBM. That weapon is harder to detect and intercept than its liquid fuel ICBMs. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un previously said it was his most powerful weapon in the North's arsenal. The missile was fired from North Korea's capital region around 10 a.m. and flew about 620 miles. It landed in waters beneath the Korean peninsula and Japan. South Korean and Japanese assessments said the missile was launched at a high angle in an apparent attempt to avoid neighboring countries. The Japanese chief cabinet secretary said the missile flew for 74 minutes. That is the longest flight time recorded by any weapon launched by North Korea. The previous record was 71 minutes during a test flight of a liquid fuel ICBM last year. In other news, anti-extremism advocates are growing alarmed at Republican efforts to cut the Defense Department's Inspector General for Diversity, Inclusion, and Extremism. For more on this, military veterans and journalism fellow Nikki Wentling joins the podcast today. So, Nikki, what are Republicans proposing in the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act?
So the amendment I looked at was from Representative Mark Alford. He's a Republican from Missouri, and he's a first-term congressman who declared that he wanted to eradicate what he called wokeness in the U.S. military. So he set his sights in particular on eliminating a position within the Defense Department Inspector General's office that was stood up only 2 years ago. And that office investigates the Pentagon's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and it tracks how the Pentagon handles cases of sexual harassment and assault. It also analyzes how the Pentagon tries to prevent ideological extremism in the ranks and responds to extremist activities as they come up. He argued that focusing on issues like diversity and extremism hurts retention and recruitment, which I would add that there isn't data to prove. There's not detailed data in general about what's stopping Americans from signing up in the military, but there are a lot of ideas, and this is his.
How is this part of a larger effort to root out what they consider wokeness among the ranks?
Sure. So if you've been following Congress's work on this year's defense policy bill at all, you know that some hot button measures in the House bill are complicating things. Those additions include banning drag shows on military bases, protecting troops who refuse to get the COVID vaccine, prohibiting the teaching of critical race theory at service academies, and so on. So this amendment from Representative Alford is part of that larger effort.
And what has the response been to this amendment?
Yeah, for sure. The fact that it was proposed in the first place alarmed some people who advocate for diversity training and extremism prevention in the military. One person I spoke to is actually Teresa Hull. She's the person who holds the position within the DoD Inspector General's office that Alford is trying to eliminate. And she said she believes in the value of her office's work and thinks that it should continue to exist. There's been a lot of talk from conservatives about how the military's focus on DEI initiatives and extremism prevention have hurt recruiting. But Hull, she said that when potential recruits can't identify with other people in the military, they're less likely to join. So they need to see that diversity. And part of what her office is focused on this year is shedding light on how the Pentagon could better recruit and retain a diverse force. Allison Jaslow is another person I talked to. She's the CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And she basically said it's senseless to cut a position within the IG's office that works to create, the best culture possible for troops, especially given current recruiting problems. And as far as the extremism prevention side of it, I also talked to an expert on domestic militias, Amy Cooter, who said that a more diverse force means more opportunity to challenge any stereotypes service members might have, and that helps prevent radicalization into extremist ideologies down the road.
Thanks, Nikki. For more conversations like that one, please like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on your radar for today, we have some updates on senior military nominees. The nomination hearing for Air Force Lieutenant General Timothy Hawk went smoothly. Senators on the Intelligence Committee more focused on his potential role as National Security Agency Director than the boss of U.S. Cyber Command. Lawmakers asked Hawk several questions about Section 702, a foreign surveillance provision. He also answered questions about information security measures in the wake of the so-called Discord leaks. If confirmed, Hawk will succeed Army General Paul Nakasone. Of course, this is all moot until the Senate either decides to move ahead with individual military nominations or Senator Tommy Tuberville stops holding on nominees over the Pentagon's abortion policy. General Randy George also testified today before the Senate Armed Services Committee, and President Joe Biden nominated Lieutenant General James Mingus to be the Army's next Vice Chief of Staff. He has spent the last year as a part of a high-level team rushing military aid to Ukraine. And now, here are some other stories we're hearing chirps about. The Island Packet reported bird strikes caused the $37 million Marine FA-18D fighter jet crash near Beaufort, South Carolina in 2022. Officials said this week an Army vet who was left paralyzed after he was slammed to the ground during a traffic stop in California won a $20 million settlement, one of the largest in the state's history. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base said this week that around 1,500 gallons of heating and coolant fluids leaked at the Air Force School of Aerospace Medicine. Around 500 gallons of it went into the sewer drain system. The leak has been repaired. And on this day in history, in 1942, actor Harrison Ford was born. Among other roles, he is of course well known for battling Nazis as the character Indiana Jones, who fought in World War II. That's it for us this morning. To get more top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like, rating, and a comment wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at @defense_news and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted and produced by me, Zamone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by Molly Weisner, The Associated Press, Nikki Wentling, Colin Demarest, and Jed Judson. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Gruss. Have a great day.